Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. In this podcast, I'm going to be returning to a topic that I have addressed over and over again. Maybe too many times. I don't know. That is not for me to say. That is for you to say, since you are the viewer. Gaza. Gaza. I can't seem to get Gaza out of my mind. Literally. I try. I would like to produce more podcasts on other subjects, and I do, but it seems like I keep on returning to the same subject over and over again. And I guess it's because my heart is broken. When I see the pictures of people starving to death, being shot, especially the suffering children in Gaza, my heart breaks. And I can't see how, in all fairness, I can talk about something else. Although I do sometimes. But to be honest, when I do that, I sometimes feel guilty. I mean, not guilty in the sense that I am responsible for the conflict. Obviously, I'm not. You're not. Unless you happen to be Benjamin Netanyahu or Joseph Biden or somebody in the governments of those two madmen. But I still feel guilty. Why? Because I feel as though we are a single humanity. As Roy Bhaskar said, we are co-present. We are co-present. That means that we are all connected to one another. Going back to Bhaskar's concept of co-presence is important to me because co-presence is an extension of Roy's concept of non-duality, or in Sanskrit, Advaita. Advaita literally translates as not two. That's the literal translation of Advaita, not two. But it's generally rendered in English as non-duality. And when I think of non-duality, I think of the fact, not the speculation, not the supposition, that everything in reality is connected to everything else. There is no real separation between us, between anyone. It doesn't matter who we are, where we come from, what our ancestries are, what our tribes or races are, what our ethnicities are, what our nationalities are, what our religions are, what our political philosophies are, what views on economics we may have. None of those really matter. We are still a part of the same substance, that same non-dual substance, which I personally call the human spirit. There is only one human spirit, not many. The various souls that are existent on this planet come from that one human spirit, but are connected to it. So my soul is an emanation or a manifestation, perhaps, from the human spirit. So was your soul. So was the soul of every other human being on this planet. We are all products of the human spirit. And without the human spirit, we would not exist. So to me, non-duality or Advaita can be encompassed by the term the human spirit, or another term for that is the rational soul. By rational soul, I don't mean individual soul. The rational soul, or the human spirit, is collective. The individual soul, my soul, is me. And so many individual souls are manifested by the collective rational soul. It is who I am. It is who you are. You and I are not separate people. Not really. Not ultimately. On the highest level or order of reality, you and I are one. Not only you and I, but the entire universe is one. That is an even higher understanding of co-presence. So going beyond the human spirit, going beyond that to encompass the animal spirit, the vegetable spirit, and the mineral spirit, all those spirits are literally a part of the same spirit. That means that even a dog, a cat, and a bird, and I mention those because they are my favorite animals, are a part of me. I am connected with them. And so when I see a cat or a bird or a dog, my first impulse is to talk to them. Tell you a story. This was maybe about 6 months ago. I was sitting in front of a restaurant, eating outside, and there was a bird that was walking along the edge of the outdoor wall of that restaurant, scrounging for food, I assume. I kept on talking to the bird in a very soft way. It wasn't the most attractive bird in the world. It was kind of a grayish bird, but I loved it. For some reason, I just loved that bird. And so I continually talked to it. Eventually, the bird, I'm not sure, jumped up or flew up. I guess flew up, but it looked like jumped up to me onto the table and started staring at me, and eventually went like this, a very vulnerable position, kind of like the bird's body language in a sense. In retrospect, I don't know why I didn't feed the bird. I mean, I was eating a hamburger. I could have taken off some bread from the bottom of the roll and given it to the bird, but I was so entranced by the fact that this bird had jumped up onto the table that I didn't think of it until after the bird had already flown away. But I love that bird. And that bird is a part of me. The entire universe is a part of me. We are literally all a part of one another. That is the implication of Roy Bhaskar's philosophy of meta-reality. The connection between the spiritual and the material, that both of them are united. There is no real separation. Reality is one. existence is one. What Roy Bhaskar called the cosmic envelope, I inverted into the cosmic interior, because in my view, the spiritual does not surround the material. Rather, the material surrounds the spiritual. In other words, in my view, spirituality is the core of existence. When we become more spiritualized, as we go deeper and deeper and deeper into spirituality, we don't go outside of where we are, we go inside of where we are. And therefore, it might be said that God is the innermost reality of all created things, not the outermost reality, but the innermost. So that's why I changed Roy Bhaskar's cosmic envelope into the cosmic interior. Roy was criticized for his concept of the cosmic envelope, which he developed during the last decade of his life after his trip to India and his acceptance of what he said was a type of Advaitic Hinduism, which I think was incorrect. Although Roy said he was an Advaitist, he really was not an Advaitist. He really was a Advaitist, meaning he believed in both duality and non-duality. And that is what is expressed in Roy's cosmic envelope. The problem is not the Advaitism or the duality, non-duality. The problem is the placement of the dual and the non-dual, whether the dual is inside or whether the dual is outside. And that is extremely important. Now, to the average person might say, who cares? But if you are a social theorist like me, or a philosopher like Roy, that concept, that distinction, becomes extremely important. So to me, the idea of the cosmic interior means that as I become more evolved, more spiritual, hopefully, with time, slowly, I think in my case, very slowly, I'm actually going deeper within. I'm actually going within. The funny thing which just popped into my head at that moment was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was a movie which came out when I was a child. My mother, my sister, and myself went to see it at Radio City Music Fair in Manhattan when I was a kid. I'm from New York City, born in Manhattan. And during that movie, my mother started wondering why she was feeling very much, I guess, immersed in the movie. And the reason why was because my sister was peeing, and the water, I guess, was getting out of the diaper. And so she had to go into the bathroom and clean herself off. But that's how I feel about reality, that reality is a quest for what is within, not for what is without. We want to go from without to within, not from within to without. The more spiritual we become, the more interior we go in life and in reality. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, but I hope it does. My point basically is that spirituality is a quest for inwardness, a quest to go inside of things. The innermost reality of everything is spiritual. The outermost reality is not. It's simply a shell. It's simply a shell. But when you go within, you go beyond the shell and you experience the ethereal realms, the spiritual realms that go beyond the mere shell. Because the shell doesn't really matter. It's kind of inconsequential in the long term of things. What matters is how deep we can go, not how outwardly we can go. We need to go within and experience that inward reality of spirit. And that's what Roy, as a philosopher, as a Marxist-Leninist, believed. He literally created a kind of combination of Marxism, Leninism, and spirituality, which he called, in general, critical realism. But in terms of the spiritual aspect of critical realism, the philosophy of meta-reality. So the philosophy of meta-reality is the culmination of Roy's philosophy of critical realism. And that's why I'm a critical realist, because I want to go within. I want to experience that core. And throughout my life, I've always wanted that. I've never really understood how to get there in the past. But Roy provides guidance on how I, as a limited human being, can get there. One of those ways is through what Roy referred to, although he didn't coin the concept or the term, phenomenological analysis, which is based on the phenomenology of the German philosopher Edmund Husserl, meaning that you try to intersubjectively connect with other beings. And so, going back to the bird, what I have found myself doing is intersubjectively connecting with birds, but not only with birds, with dogs, with cats. I've always loved those animals, but I've never known how to connect with them, or I never really even thought it was possible to really connect with them on a deeper level. It is. One can. And that should be a major priority in our lives, in my view. So that's basically a kind of introduction to where I want to go with this particular podcast, to kind of explore what is going on between Israel and Gaza in the context of moving from the outward to the inward in becoming more non-dual, more Advaitic in that sense, developing a greater sense of co-presence. If there is one thing that I see lacking in Israel right now, and with the majority of Israeli Jews, it's like 80%, is the support for the war in Gaza. Literally, support for a genocide. Now, I often ask myself, as somebody from a Jewish background myself, how could anyone from a Jewish background support another Holocaust, which is precisely what Israel is now doing on the Gazans? And I don't have an answer to that. I don't understand it. It makes no sense. It is like Israel is going back and reading the history of Nazi Germany and trying to replicate it. Literally. Why? I don't know. But I feel a need to know that. I feel like I should know that. So many Jews died, 6 million Jews, and a lot of other people who were not Jews, Jehovah's Witnesses, Gypsies, and many others in the Holocaust. Why would Jews, who made up the overwhelming majority of those who were killed by Adolf Hitler and his regime, want to repeat what Hitler did? I don't know. But that is literally, it seems to me, what they are doing. I mean, the concentration camps are like the occupied territories of Palestine. They literally are like prisons, just like the Jews were in by the Third Reich of Adolf Hitler. Why would anybody who belongs to a family and ethnicity which has experienced such horrors want to perpetrate those horrors on anyone else? I can only say that I am at a loss for words. I don't understand it. But as a sociologist, I feel a need to understand it. I mean, most people are not fortunate enough, and I consider it fortunate, maybe some people would not, that I have a Ph.D. Because getting a Ph.D., if it's approached correctly, can give you a way of approaching the world in an intelligent way, a way of learning from others, and a way of learning from one's own self, a way of thinking in a critical way. Do most people think critically? No. Most people do not think critically. Now, is it necessary to get a PhD to think critically? No, of course not. But if you get a PhD and you don't think critically, something went seriously wrong. I mean, that's what getting a PhD should do. I know a lot of autodidacts, self-taught people, one in particular, who are brilliant and who might as well have PhDs, even though they don't even have bachelor's degrees. But certainly having a PhD for myself, I feel a responsibility to be able to make sense out of what is happening in Gaza, why the Israelis are doing what they are doing to the Gazans. And I literally cannot make sense out of it. I try every day. Every time I make a podcast on Gaza, that is my objective. After I finish making it, I go back and watch it for two reasons. One, to see if I communicated effectively. If I did not, I will sometimes delete it and do it over again. This is actually the third time I have done this particular podcast for that reason. But also so I can see if I'm actually expressing the problems in Gaza, the experiences of the Gazan people. Now, obviously, I cannot experience those things. I am not a Gazan. I wish that I were in Gaza. Now, that may sound strange, but I really do. I wish that I were in Gaza right now. I wish that I were with my Gazan brothers and sisters, my Semitic Gazan brothers and sisters. I love them. And I want to be with them, but I'm not. And realistically, is that going to happen? I don't think so, no. But the best I can do from my perspective, and maybe it's not the best I can do. Maybe it's not. But the best I think I can do is to engage in conscientization, critical conscience, and consciousness raising through these podcasts, to try to inspire others. I always hope that Gazans, at least, even if only one Gazan, is watching my podcasts on Gaza. I always hope that. So they can know that not all people of Jewish ancestry hate them and wish for their death. I am distraught when I watch some videos where some Israeli Zionists are speaking and talking about their desire that all Gazans be killed, be wiped off, referring to them as scum, as scum. They literally have no concept of the cosmic interior. They literally have no concept of co-presence, of non-duality. It's missing. Something went wrong, in my view, in their lives. Some deficit in their being, which prevents them from, I guess, seeing and experiencing the selves of others. When I practice phenomenology, which is a practice literally of non-duality, I try to connect with other people, such as the Gazans. And I try to feel what they feel based upon the limited amount of information I have in the news, primarily, but also just from what I feel without reading the news. I have a deep sense of connectedness with the Gazans. And so I reflect on that, and I try to bring that into my consciousness, into my awareness, and to forget about the differences, which Husserl called bracketing or epike, meaning you set aside any externalities because they really do not matter. What matters is that we are all a part of that one, yes, that one human spirit. That's what matters. Nothing else matters. That is co-presence. That is the non-duality which exists between human beings, but which expands beyond human beings as well, as I mentioned before. So I make these podcasts, again, to try to talk to people in a way that is both empathetic and assuring that I understand. I don't know how successful I am. I don't. Hardly anybody ever comments on my podcasts, which I regret. I wish some people would. But I get very few comments. Only occasionally does anyone comment on my podcasts. I don't even have that many viewers, and I wish I did. Not out of a desire for ego gratification, but to know whether what I am doing is helping people. I want to help people. I mean, I retired from my career as a sociology professor, but I consider this to be a continuation of my career, in a sense. Making podcasts, to me, is a continuation of lecturing to my students. And really what I'm doing is lecturing. I have no guests. I might eventually do that, but as of now, I don't. These are simply statements that are made from my heart to yours and others. trying to bring us all into a state of, again, co-presence, to make us all realize that, again, we are a part of that same human spirit, that same non-duality, that same non-dual reality which exists throughout the entire universe, the space of the entire universe. What I wanted to do here now, and this will basically conclude the podcast, is to read a short excerpt from an article that was on the CNN site about the relationship between Joseph Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu. Most of the information in the CNN article was taken from the article that I read portions of yesterday from NBC News and from MSNBC. But the concluding paragraphs of that article added something original to it. And so it is that conclusion that I wanted to read. And I will, of course, include a link to the article from CNN itself in the comments section of the video, just as I included a link to the CNN article in the comments to my video yesterday. So what I'm going to do now is to put on my eyeglasses, because I literally am blind without them in terms of reading, and just read you what the author says. The author is Nadine Ibrahim, which is an Arabic name. The title of the article is "Rift Between Biden and Netanyahu Widens as Israeli Leader Vows to Press On with Rafah Operation." And again, you see, I'm scrolling down because I'm not going to read the whole thing. Most of it is a repetition of what I read yesterday. No reason to read those parts of it, but just the last several paragraphs, which are different, which are original to this article. Here it goes. In a candid moment, caught on hot mic, Biden revealed his frustration with Netanyahu after his State of the Union speech last week. Now, what that means, I don't know. Who knows what it means, his frustration. He's frustrated, and yet he keeps on sending Israel money and military supplies. So what kind of frustration is that? I have no idea. I don't understand Biden, but to be honest, I've never understood Joseph Biden. And I've been following him through most of his career. He makes no sense to me. I told him, Bibi, and don't repeat this. Now, obviously, it got out, so we're repeating it. But you and I are going to have a come to Jesus meeting. I've always heard that stated as a come to Jesus moment, but so be it. A come to Jesus meeting. Biden was heard telling Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Senator Michael Bennet. Asked about the moment, Biden told MSNBC the comment meant he intends to have a serious meeting soon with Netanyahu. Okay, soon. What is soon? And why hasn't that meeting taken place yet? What is he waiting for? You are the one, Biden, who is sending Benjamin Netanyahu money and materiel. So shouldn't he be the one to meet with you? I mean, you meeting with him seems opposite. It's like the supplier coming to the suppliant, but it should be the suppliant coming to the supplier. So that seems backwards to me, but that's just my own personal view. I've known Bibi for 50 years, and he knew what I meant by it. Well, I'm happy you can read Benjamin Netanyahu's mind, Joseph Biden. I'm happy you can do that. What is happening is that he has a right to defend Israel, a right to continue to pursue Hamas, Biden said. Let me pause there and make a comment. Does Netanyahu have a right to defend Israel? Now, I do not wish harm on Israel. There are people who live there. They are members of the same ethnicity as I have for the most part. I don't want them to be hurt, particularly. I want their war to stop. I want them to stop engaging in state terrorism, but I don't wish them any harm, particularly, or in any sense. But the right of Israel to defend itself, no. That I do not agree with. And here is why. It's a very specific reason. A year before, and I'd mentioned this before, a year before Israel began as a country, a year before the UN Security Council, with the US casting the deciding vote, decided to make Israel into an independent country in 1948. Future Israelis with tanks drove into Palestine, leveling homes of Palestinians, killing Palestinians, and exiling the others, or many of the others, to the so-called Palestinian territories. That's what happened. That's the reality. Now, that should sound familiar. Why? What did Hitler do? Hitler also had prison camps. Hitler also killed his enemies, Jews primarily, but also Jehovah's Witnesses and others. So why are Israelis repeating the war crimes of their own religious brethren? I don't understand that. That is a serious question, and I don't have an answer to it. I wish I did, especially as a sociologist. I feel like I should have an answer to it, but I genuinely do not. I guess maybe perhaps it shows that the power of hatred can conquer rationality. And so the hatred, for some reason, of Palestinians, who have often been portrayed in the Israeli media as Nazis, when it really is the other way around. Now, I'm not saying that Israelis are Nazis. I'm saying they are behaving like Nazis. You can't conflate two different historical events with each other. They're not the same, meaning the Holocaust of the 20th century, Germany and the Third Reich, and the Holocaust of the 21st century, Israel and Gaza, are distinct events. But they are so similar in so many ways. It is really hard to separate them from one another, at least for me. And so I think the only thing I can come to is what I just said, that for some reason, and I don't know what that reason is, most Israelis, 80%, support the war, or better, the terrorist campaign against Gaza. Why? Why? It makes no sense. It's totally irrational. There is no reason for it. they are hurting their own brothers and sisters, their own Semitic brothers and sisters. Why would they support it? I don't understand it. In the United States, Jews and Arabs have a long history of cooperation on many levels. The kinds of problems that exist between Israel and Palestine do not exist between Jews and Arabs in the US. The Anti-Defamation League, for example, which defends Jewish rights, will commonly protest whenever the rights of Muslims and Arabs are being trampled on. And many Arab organizations will do the same when the rights of Jews are being trampled on. So there is nothing innate in Jews and Arabs or Israelis or Palestinians which makes them natural adversaries. They're not. And yet, for some reason, that kind of adversarial relationship has continued and developed and accelerated in Israel and has gotten to the point now where many Jews are calling Gazans Nazis. That is new, at least to me. Maybe it's not new. I mean, I have never been to Israel, and certainly under present circumstances, as long as the Palestinians are being persecuted, I would never go there. That's my own personal view. I would never step foot in that country. Never. That's my own value system. I don't condemn others who have different views. They can do what they want, but that's how I see it. But I could not step foot in a country that treats people the way that Israel is treating the Palestinians. Comparing them to Nazis when it's actually the Israelis who are behaving like Nazis. I'm not saying they are Nazis. They're not Nazis. Nazis are different. Nazis are against Jews. But they're like Nazis. They're doing the same kind of thing, literally, that the Nazis did in Germany back in the 20th century during World War II. So it's difficult to understand. Okay, so that's the first part of it, that Israel has a right to defend itself. No, because of what Israel did, how Israel was started on the blood of Palestinians, I would say no, it does not have a right to defend itself. It has a right to create a brand new country where Jews would have absolutely no superiority at all. Not a two-state solution, but a one-state solution, and a state not run exclusively by Jews. That's what I support. A single state. A state where people are living literally in co-presence. That's what I would like to see personally. Then the second part, a right to continue to pursue Hamas. Okay. Do I support Hamas? It depends on what you mean by that. Ideologically, no. Hamas is an Islamist organization, or in Arabic, the term would be Islamiyah. Islamiyah is not Islam. Islamiyah is basically the view commonly known as Al-Qaeda and ISIS, but also shared by a lot of other organizations who are not as radical, that there should be a Muslim theocracy. That's the idea. That's what Islamiyah or Islamism is. The belief in a Muslim theocracy. It's similar in some ways, not exactly the same, but similar in some ways to the kind of Christian nationalism which has been discussed recently in the media here in the US. But not only in the US, Christian nationalism extends beyond the US as well, but perhaps it is mostly established in the US. So no, in that sense, I don't believe in any kind of nationalism run by a particular religion enforcing its own sets of laws, especially on people who are not members of that religion. Now, if a religion wants to have its laws and have them for people who are members of that religion, well, that's what religions commonly do. Why not? If, that way it's a voluntary thing. If you choose to join a religion, then you are subject to those laws. If you choose to leave that religion, then you are no longer subject to those laws. But the idea of Islamia or Christian nationalism would mean that regardless of whether you are a Christian or a Christian nationalist, or regardless of whether you subscribe to Islamia, that you are obligated to conform to the laws of those religions. That I do not support. Okay, let's go on. And there's only one more paragraph, one more sentence. But he, referring to Netanyahu, must, and again, Biden emphasizes that he must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. I mean, yeah, but that's too mealy-mouthed. What do you mean he must? If he doesn't want innocent lives taken, then why is he sending money and weapons to Israel? Against the will of Congress, by the way. Congress voted against it. And Biden is still sending the money. Biden has openly called himself a Zionist. He clearly is a Zionist. But he violated the law. But is he going to be impeached? No, he's not going to be impeached. Why? Because he is doing something which both parties are terrified of opposing: the support of Israel. AIPAC, an organization in the United States of ultra-conservative Zionists, Zionist Jews. So nobody is going to prosecute Joe Biden for what he is doing, even though technically he did break the law. But again, it's, breaking the law is not really significant if there's nobody to enforce the law, if there's nobody to say, go ahead and stop doing that, or else we'll come after you. The arm of the law will come after you. That's not going to happen to Joe Biden. So Joe Biden is a war criminal. Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, but there are many war criminals in both Israel and the US and in Germany who are engaged in either supporting or executing this terrorist campaign against Gaza. And again, let me repeat something I said earlier in a previous podcast. Whenever the term Hamas is used by Israeli officials, what is meant is Gaza. Whenever the term Hamas is used by Israeli officials, what is meant is Gaza. For the time being, this has been Mark, by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.